Jasmine and today Greg Batten, and we will be talking about TBN and why it matters and why it doesn't matter now because times are different. Right, Marissa?
Very true. I had a lot of customers, they used to ask me when I'd be going in and talking about the different oils that we offered, they'd ask, what's the TBN level of your brand new oil? And then they would tell me that's how they were looking at their oil samples as well to judge the lifeblood or the life expectancy of an oil. And unfortunately, that's not really the case anymore. Thank goodness we have Greg here to help us explain things.
Greg.
Well, thank you, ladies. I sure appreciate the invitation to come and to chat with your group here today. You are correct. TBN has been a kind of a guiding light for those of us in the used oil side of business, or the lubricant business, trying to determine when an oil has run its course and when it's time to change the oil out. That's been one of the tools that we've used. But engines have changed. Diesel fuel has changed. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how that change has progressed and actually changed the demands and requirements of the oils that we use currently. So what can you see on my screen? Can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Okay, great. Then we're going to get started here. Again, my name is Greg Batten. I'm the heavy duty business manager for the West region for Valvoline. And you'll see some Valvoline slides in here. Those are the tools that I use in my everyday life, but really I hope this is more a general industry type of a knowledge presentation, and that it's beneficial to everyone who's on this call, regardless of what brand they choose to use for their lubrication. All right, let's get started. So first, a little history lesson. So anyone who's been in the industry more than the last 15 or 20 years has probably personally experienced the API diesel categories that you see listed on the screen there. And even if you're only in the industry a couple of years, you would have experienced our most current iteration, that being CK4, and experienced or heard about CJ4, which was the prior version, the product category 10, as it's called, for the combustible engine or the commercial diesel engines. Well, prior to that, there was the CI, and then prior to that, there was the CH and G and F and all the letters that precede I in the alphabet. And what you can see at the very bottom of this screen is that the CI became current back in 2002, almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago now, right? And you can also see I've highlighted how diesel fuels across the country at that point had 5% sulfur content. Now in the Los Angeles County Basin, or Los Angeles Air Quality Basin, even at that time, it was already down to near what's considered ultra low sulfur diesel levels, ahead of the rest of the country. But for the rest of the country, they purchased and used diesel that had 5,000 parts per million of sulfur in it, as opposed to what happened when CJ4 came along, or what LA Air Quality Basin was experiencing, which was 15 parts per million of sulfur. So again, 5,000 parts per million was the norm for most of the country. 15 was LA Air Quality, and ultimately California leading the way. CK4 came out, I'm sorry, I didn't point out, that was back in 2010 when CJ4 came into being. So again, 8 years ago. CK4 came out latter part of December of 16, latter part of 16 for the 2017 year models. And again, it maintains a very low sulfur content, that being 15 parts per million. So what does all of that mean? Well, when in days prior, when we were helping customers understand how to evaluate their oil and manage their drain intervals, one of the tools that we would use would be something like this. And you can see that this technical bulletin is dated 2013.001. That's the first one that came out in 2013, technical bulletin for my company. And we talked about TBN there, and we showed this little diagram about how you would purchase oil in 1 gallon jugs off of shelves at truck stops or various locations, so that you are getting the absolute most pristine quality quality product from the manufacturers, being it Valvoline, Chevron, Shell, Mobil, Castrol, etc. Right? We did not want to use oil that had traveled by rail or traveled by truck or could have any way been anything other than what came off the production line. And we put it through a test. And then what we would do in this test is we would now evaluate the TBN, total base number, base being the opposite of acid, if you remember your high school chemistry. And we would evaluate it. And then, Valvoline, of course, used this as a tool to make a claim that ours was the best oil in the world, right? Because we had such great TBN retention after it was all done. So the reason that this was important was because as diesel fuel is combusted in a diesel engine, it creates sulfurous acids. And those acids would build up. And as those acids built up, it became corrosive to components in your engine bearing and other parts that were softer metals that were susceptible to corrosion. And what would happen would be you needed a good, strong additive to offset that. So I often use the phrase that this chart's kind of like what your financial advisor would say. It's not what you start with, it's what you end up with, right? So it didn't really matter whether your TBN number was 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 when you began, when it was fresh. It really mattered what it ended up with after your truck had gone 25 or 30 or 40 or 50,000 miles, whatever your drain interval was. So TBN these days is less of a concern than it used to be, but this chart still, I think, is instructive to us as we turn our thoughts toward oxidation. And oxidation is what happens when oil is subjected to heat. Think of if you were to put canola oil into a frying pan, turn the heat on, well, it goes from being a nice, beautiful amber color to a pretty dark, pretty ugly dark brown color that maybe is kind of caramelized, would be one way to think of it. Well, that's the oxidation process that happened with that oil due to excessive heat. So we're going to kind of go back in time and compare the difference between, and I'm going to see if I can get a better pointer here. Pointer options, laser pointer. The difference between diesel fuel in the early 2000 eras and natural gas oil in the same time frame. And the natural gas oil actually is fairly reflective of gasoline oil. And what you can see is back when CI4, you recall that being 2002, was in place, there was a lot of focus on acid control. I've talked about that. On soot control, that was another byproduct of the diesel that was available to be used back then. On ash limits, ash is what remains after an oil is cooked in a cylinder, in a piston, not a piston, but a cylinder, and the residual that remains, generally it's because of the composition of the detergents that are in there. And so ash limits were pretty important. And oxidation, you see, wasn't really a big deal. Whereas on the natural gas or gasoline, acid control was a big deal. Soot was not. Ash wasn't even really a focus at all. And oxidation was a very big deal because natural gas motors and gasolines during this time frame burned a lot hotter than diesel fuel. Well, let's go forward about 10 years to the CJ4 era. Well, you can see that the Cummins engine spec, and Cummins is really the only one who's making natural gas motors for heavy duty applications. And of course, the gasoline as well. Again, a little bit less concerned about acid because they were also having fuel changes, a cleaner natural gas. Soot was still not a big deal. Ash limits were starting to creep up as a part of their focus, and oxidation stability continued to remain high. Looking on the diesel side, you can see acid is dropping in focus because, again, the ultra low sulfur diesel was starting to be rolled out and it was anticipated. Soot, again, was dropping because of the diesel being itself cleaned up, as well as engines being manufactured to tighter tolerances. Ash was, again, becoming less of a focus, and oxidation was increasing. If you look back from CI to CJ, it's a little more important, right? So what you're seeing here is a convergence of diesel fuel priorities to align with natural gas priorities, with really this rightmost column, this oxidation becoming more and more important, whether you're on the diesel fuel side of power, on the natural gas side of power, and then if I had a chart, it would be on the gasoline side of power as well. So what does this mean? Well, it means that since what's the plural of focus? Is it foci? Let's call it that. Since the foci of diesel and natural gas and gasoline is converging, we can now, or we've arrived at a point where we can now make an engine oil that works for all three power sources, right? We don't need an engine oil for electric, but that's not the business that most of us are in yet, is powering our heavy equipment by electricity. But if it's gasoline, natural gas, or diesel, we can do that. Now, what's kind of nice, and I'll try to zoom in on this just a little bit, is this engine oil, this multi-fuel oil, as it's called, is fully backward compatible for all of the diesel applications, CK4, CJ4, CI plus, etc., all the ones that go back. It meets the latest gasoline specs, SP, which becomes official May 1, as well as the prior generations of gasoline, because gasoline has an API specification as well, SN, and prior to that was SM. And then it meets all the recent specs for natural gas as well. So it doesn't matter how old your natural gas unit is, even if it's your propane forklifts, you now can really use one engine oil to service all of your power units. And what's kind of nice about it is you don't give up anything. You know, so many times in our experience, if we get a crossover product, it's a compromise product. Let's say that you get an SUV that has four-wheel drive experience. Well, it does have four-wheel drive, but you're not going to take it off-roading like you would a Jeep, right? And even if you got a Wrangler, it's got great four-wheel drive. Maybe it's got leather. Maybe it's got great electronics. Maybe it's got a great sound system. It still doesn't ride as comfortable as a Lexus or a Cadillac or something like that, right? But that's not the case with these new products. Again, I'll try to zoom in just a little bit on your screen. What you see is these newer generation of multi-fuel products allow natural gas users to double their drain interval from 500,000 up to 1,000. And for the diesel side of things, with these new multi-fuel products, you can go 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and even some cases, like in the Cummins X15 and X12, you can go up to 80,000 mile drain intervals. Proper management, proper usage of oil analysis is certainly required if you start going into those extra innings there. But Marissa and Jasmine will be able to certainly help you and guide you through that conversation. And I and my resources are certainly standing ready to help them. So looking at the lower left-hand side of this slide, basically we see that everything from pickup trucks to cement trucks, trash trucks, what's not on here and should be is the off-road side. Dozers, scrapers, excavators, they all will be able to use this oil, and it might really become a very beneficial single oil for a lot of users, both off-road and on-road. So just to summarize this, engine oil priorities are conversion. We saw that on the prior chart. Multi-fuel oils are here, and they're very, very good. They don't have to be compromise oils. They go the full drain intervals for diesel, for natural gas, and for gasoline. Multi-fuel oils can be extended drain oils as well, and multi-fuels have many benefits. And some of those benefits are on the right-hand side of this screen. It's just for inventory consolidation, for the distributor truck, for the customer's shop, for the customer's tank. I mean, how many times have you, wherever you feel, wherever you land on this, continuum of handling lubrication, whether the end user or the distributor thought, golly, I wish I had a few less products that I had to manage and shuffle and stock and pay for and whatnot. Inventory equipment consolidation certainly is available with these multi-fuel products. Inventory consolidation, error reduction. You know, if there aren't too many options for folks to grab for and use, you can rest assured that you're getting the right product in the tank. And you know, if you happen to be someone who sells these, well, you know, now you can put these products into your toolkit and pursue different types of opportunities that you might not have been able to pursue. I know there's a lot of sellers on this call as well as end users, and we're grateful for that. So it was a short presentation. I thank you for your time. And with that, ladies, I'm going to turn I'm going to close out the screen, quit sharing, and turn it back over to you.
So if someone was to switch over, what would be the steps? Would they just have to drain everything that they have, or what would be the starting point of them switching over to this type of oil?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really quite simple. Let's say that you have a tank that you serve diesel out of, and you are going to continue serving only diesel. All you do is you put this product on top of that and continue to serve your diesel. If you thought, I've got some natural gas in my fleet, or I want to start servicing my 1030 or 530 pickups, my heavy duty pickups that we use for our business, then what you might want to do is you might want to draw it down, or you probably should draw it down to 5 or 10%, right? Because you don't want the additive package that was really a diesel only additive package to be going into a natural gas. So you dilute it.
Okay.
And conversely, if you have, let's say maybe one of your customers is a refuse company, they have gasoline, natural gas powered trash trucks, and now they want to put their diesel trucks out of the same tank. Same thing, draw it down a little bit and convert over. But conversion is very easy. It would be difficult to construct a scenario that would be a problem because it's so easy. And if somebody's got a question or confusion, all they have to do is reach out to you folks or me, and then we will, and I'm sorry, I didn't turn my camera on. And then what we'll do is we will make sure that they get the right guidance there.
Jasmine, what I think is really neat about this is now customers don't have to have, or construction sites or wherever this could go, they don't need to have 3 different tanks, 3 different pumps, 3 different things, and let's say 3 different products fully stocked at one time. Instead, right now, everyone's trying to save a little bit of money. If you only need to order into 1 tank, they're cutting costs right there.
Right. No, I agree.
Absolutely. And especially coming out of this situation that we're currently in, all of our businesses have been impacted, and cash flow is going to be even tighter than it has been in many, many years, if not ever. And certainly carrying less inventory, turning it faster makes a lot of good sense. And these type of multi-fuel products are arriving really at just the time that we need them.
Agreed. Oh, well, thank you so much, Greg, for helping us educate. I'm sure we're going to be coming back to you with tons of questions as it goes.
Good.
Along the way, and we hope to have you again.
Thank you. Happy to answer, and look forward to joining you folks on your next call. And great job educating the public, your customers, on some of these new technologies, new changes that are coming out in engine oils, in coolants, in greases, a lot of hydraulics. I mean, a lot of good things upcoming I saw on your schedule. So tip of the hat to you guys. Great job.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you at a later time. And of course, I can't get the recording to stop. So sorry for that. We will do this quickly.
Well, we have greases next up, huh? I think
that's good. All right.
I think our next one's grease, everybody. So everybody join us next time for some grease.
Yes. I heard a rumor there might be samples involved.